Time to preview the small forward position for the Pacers this season. A lot of young guys, lots of important stuff here with Aaron Nesmith, Jarace Walker, and Johnny Furphy. We'll get to all of them today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Wednesday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today, continuing on the player position preview series on the wing at the small forward spot. We've done the ones, we've done the twos. We'll get all of them done before the preseason starts, just in time, I hope. And today, we're on the threes. Aaron Nesmith, clearly a three. Johnny Furphy, maybe a three, maybe a four. Jarace Walker was a four, maybe is transitioning to playing the three. So there's a lot of fluidity at this spot, just like there was at the two. We had to put Cole Swider there to make this all make sense. At the four, we'll have some guys who maybe are threes. It's going to be fascinating as we continue to run through these. This is a really interesting group today because Aaron Nesmith, clearly a starter. He's only 24. He turns 25 in 2 weeks. A very young position group. The twos were sort of like this. Swider, a bit older, not really, in terms of the rest of the guys. So that's what makes this so fascinating, is the future wings for the Pacers could go lots of different ways. Nesmith could continue to be the best of this group, and he's a good player. He's a starting level NBA player on the wing that's valuable, but there's a lot of upward mobility at this spot for the Pacers. I actually want to start with Jarace Walker because of a couple things. One, and we'll talk about practice notes and early Pacers stuff tomorrow. But he did really well in the one-on-one drills at the first Pacers practice and was with the blue team, which is relevant because that's the second unit. It was TJ McConnell, Mathurin, Walker, Toppin, and Jackson. And we'll hear more about the developments of that because it sounds like Ben Shepherd's playing well too. But noteworthy stuff for Walker. And I want to start with him because of that and because I think he has the most intrigue of these three players heading into his second season. So what's the big deal for Jarace Walker? That's the theme of what I'm calling these previews. What's the big deal? And I think that everybody would kind of agree on the same thing here. Probably the Pacers would agree, and Jarace Walker kind of agrees. Can this guy actually defend? Is this really going to be a thing that translates? Because part of what enticed me to Jarace Walker as a prospect when I was watching the Houston tape was that he could do it on both ends, right? He was a good passer. He could make plays. He was a fine enough shooter. So efficient, additive on offense, but could really defend, right? Was pretty mobile, had this good size, could get steals in passing lanes, just moved around very well for someone who, as Chad Buchanan, their GM, likened him to last year, is built like a linebacker, right? That's a very fascinating and potentially awesome and destructive player type. And yet that didn't happen last year, right? The defense wasn't really there. He would gamble too much. He would kind of float out of the play. It's a different defensive scheme than Houston. It wasn't there. It wasn't clicking. In the G League, it was better, but not awesome. And he knows this, right? Rick Carlisle's talked about it. He's talked about it. Even at practice today, he was talking about lots of stuff that he can work on defensively, including some of that gambling stuff. He feels more, secure with his feet locked down, not going to happen as much. But there's a lot of stuff, again, that made him appealing as a prospect. And so all that stuff kind of translated to me. Like we saw the passing for Jarace Walker as a rookie, even though it wasn't like all the time. That was a thing. He did pass it pretty well, over an assist per game, despite barely playing that much, right? In the G League, too. It was a very good skill. He almost got to 4 assists per game in the G League. He shot it really well in the G League, over 40, almost 40% from 3, 38 in total, on over 7 attempts per game. In the NBA, he got to 40%, 22 for 55, right? Lots of signs that offensive success will be there. Even if he can't shoot, the handle's good, the passing's fine. My belief is that when Jarace Walker plays, he's going to have enough of an impact offensively that he's fine, right? At worst. And he could be a good passer and good shooter and be a really good offensive player. That's all great, right? That means he won't ever suck, even this year. That's great. But for him to be, this high-ceiling lottery guy that they were so excited about, and be exactly what the Pacers need, and why it felt like that draft last year came down to a couple guys that were strong defenders, is because of the defensive end. And if he can grow into that guy, it's the biggest thing for him and his future. It's the biggest thing for the Pacers and their future with him is, can he guard? It's exactly what they need. For all the things Nembhard and Nesmith are good at on defense, they are much shorter than Jarace Walker, right? It's not an insult. That's the height you are. Jarace Walker's 6'8", 240 last year. Aaron Nesmith was 6'5", 215, right? Like, that's a huge difference in the players you can guard and how you do it. And Walker has foot speed and he has all this stuff, but it wasn't there last year, right? Much was made of the gambling on the defensive end. If you watched any Mad Ants game, a single one, you saw it a decent amount. And he definitely cut it down throughout the season. That's noteworthy. That's important. He guarded the ball a lot in the G League too. But he really tries to be a defensive playmaker. And sometimes it's good. In college, it was really good. And in fact, one of the first times I saw him in person with the Mad Ants playing major minutes, one of the things I jotted in my notebook was when he does gamble and he doesn't succeed in doing whatever he wanted to do, get a steal, make a pass not happen, deflection out of bounds, whatever he was going for. When he has to recover into the play, he would generally be very intuitive and go, even if it wasn't where his man was, he would go to a spot where he could make a play and get a stop. Like, I thought the way he would float back into plays was actually like, oh, this guy's reading this game in this situation very well and how he can be helpful getting a stop. But the problem was he's recovering from something he shouldn't have done in the first place. So it doesn't matter that much. But that still told me something like, man, if he didn't do the first thing, this could be really valuable. Because then let's pretend he's in position already and then he's floating in to a better position to make that play I just talked about. He wants to be a defensive playmaker, and that's good. But he's got to guard his own guy. And that's big for him and the team. Last year, I want to start with this. He did talk about being better at that already, and I mentioned that earlier, but that was something that came up at practice today. I think the fact that he's with the second unit is at least somewhat telling about what that could look like, and guys have raved about what he's looked like in minicamp too. Like, if he can actually be less gambly and a good defender, which maybe I'm reading too much into one practice in minicamp, but that's a big deal, right? That cutting that down and being that kind of player is a big deal. Knowing the system better, I think, will make him less likely to gamble too. Like, if he knows he's in position, he knows he's doing the right thing, and he knows what he's supposed to do for a whole possession, he's going to be less inclined to disrupt that and disrupt what the Pacers need him to do on that end of the floor. That's general, just year two rookie stuff, right? So knowing the system better helps. He talked about that as well. Last year, numerically, now I should preface this by saying, we all know this, Jarace Walker, primarily garbage time last year, right? In his 300 and whatever, 50-something NBA minutes he had last year, 340. Is the exact number. The Pacers defended better with him on the floor, right? 115.67 defensive rating. That's really good. That's like above average, if not right at it, in the league. And again, not the best opponents, but that number, it's small sample also, by the way, comes with opponents shooting 41% from deep with Jarace Walker on the floor last year. Some of that's because of his gambles. Some of that is outlier luck. Even the worst defensive teams ever don't give up 41% from deep. So imagine that number's more normal. What's their defensive rating with them on the floor? I'm not saying that's all because of him, especially given the opponent quality when he's on the floor, but that's good, right? Maybe there's something there already with all that. And if he can pair that into real lineups against real opponents, that's a big deal. There are some things that say he gets it on defense, right? The recoveries that I saw, that number I just said. But there's a lot of other, like, you watch the tape stuff that makes you think maybe not. So this is the biggest question about his season. Does it actually translate now? Is it going to be something that translates at all? The sooner the better, both for him getting on the floor, right? That's what's been talked about with him for forever. Once again, by Rick Carlisle at Media Day. Defense, rebounding, physicality. Those things all stand out as, yes, important things for any player, including Jarace Walker. Those are also the same things that Rick and the team talked about with him at Summer League, right? If he does those things at Summer League, this will be a successful summer for Jarace Walker. He was in better condition. I thought he rebounded pretty well. His defense was still hit or miss. In Summer League, I thought, personally, he made the second team all Summer League, but he wasn't like terrific, I would say, out there. But he did, the physicality was when he was playing very good, it was very noticeable, but it wasn't there all the time, right? So those things will matter once again this season, and they will influence his defensive success in major ways. The one-on-one tournament, the Pacers did this last year. It was a drill that they tried to implement to get better at, as they call it, guarding your yard, defending your man, whatever you want to call it. They did a one-on-one drill today. Jarace Walker finished second, right? Mathurin beat him in the final game yesterday, for you guys listening. The Pacers' first practice, right? That's a big deal, right? If he can be good at that, sit in a stance, get a stop right there, that's good. If he can do it against guys his size, that is huge for the Pacers, because that's the kind of thing, even when they got deep into the season, they could not have the best answer. Siakam was a better answer than they've had for years, since Thad probably, maybe TJ Warren, but that, if the Jarace and Pascal are options, it's just even more. So lots of stuff that suggests there's potentially a defensive jump coming. How big is that jump? is going to be big for the Pacers. Does it actually happen? How soon does it happen? Is it this season? Because he has the tools. We all know it. I can see him standing there. I can see the tools. I can see him play. But it has to happen. It absolutely has to happen. Because, again, I'm confident the offense will not suck, but the defense will get him on the floor, period. It's so major for him. It's so major for the Pacers that if he can guard, he will play. This year, someone else will not play. I don't know who. It doesn't matter. He will, because that's what they need him to be. And that is the biggest deal for him coming into the season. Can he defend? Can he be the guy he was built to be? Because the offense, to me, is already at a level it needs to be. This will be a discussion a lot throughout the season. If he's truly the backup three, that's already a major sign that they trust he can do these things. There's been a lot of discussion about conversations with, other guys who weren't in the rotation before, like Siakam during his rookie year, TJ McConnell last year, and how those have been meaningful for Jarace, and how they're telling him, just wait your turn, it's coming. When it does come, can he defend? That's what I'll be looking for, and what everybody will be looking for. And now we move on to somebody who can defend. Let's talk about Aaron Nesmith, who actually is probably going to be the hardest player to insert into this exercise that we're doing. Why? Well, I'll tell you to start this coming segment. Before we get to that, though, we need to talk about the lovely people over at FanDuel. NFL fans, I know lots of those listen to this. You can start this football season with a big return on FanDuel. Colts 2-2. My Vikings undefeated. And America's #1 sportsbook is the best way to get that big return on FanDuel, because when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, whatever it may be, you can place that bet on FanDuel. But in the same place you do that, you can check out the latest stats for games all in one place. View live play-by-play up to the moment. So much more on that same page where you place your bets. It makes it so easy to do all that. And you will get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed on FanDuel when you place your first $5 bet. $200 in bonus bets. That is on FanDuel.com. We are back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. I will continue to say Locked On Wolves, Locked On Knicks to hear more about the Karl-Anthony Towns trade. Wow. Still wow on that. I bet the league hates this trade. I tweeted about why I think the league might not like it last night. If you guys want to see my thoughts on that, congrats to ex-Pacer Dwayne Washington, who's going to get quite a bit of money to be involved and maybe at no harm to his current situation. That's as good as it gets. Really creative stuff from lots of people, though. Like, in general, very cool trade. My cap group chats are the dorkiest thing ever, yes. And also had a very fun time breaking this one down. Let's talk about the Pacers and Aaron Nesmith. The oldest guy we're talking about today, he's 24. 2 weeks from today, he'll be 25. Look, Aaron Nesmith is a really interesting player for this specific exercise, looking at Pacers players coming season. The reason I say that is, what I'm trying to do here is come up with a big question or a big theme or just something, what I've called this, as I've said a lot, is what's the big deal for this player's coming season? And Aaron Nesmith's really interesting because last year he proved to be an awesome defender. Maybe, some would argue this, the best perimeter defender on the Pacers. Some have said, right? Big adjustment to put him on Brunson in the next series. Proved that he could do it in the postseason. He shot it better last season. Right? Over 40% from three. Something that he was billed as really good at coming out of college. He hit over 50% of his threes his last season at Vanderbilt. Right? That is what the Pacers need him to do. Guard, do that, great. Shoot, do that, great. He did both. After a year after, there were questions about would he even be in the rotation. People forget that. That was a thing last summer. It was. And so now it's very obvious what he's good at. And that alone, stop right there. Right? Think about what we're doing here. A big question to find this player's season. What is that for a player like Aaron Nesmith, who has proven to do the two things that are required of someone in his role? He can already shoot and defend, right? There's stuff he can do better in those skills. You can always be a more accurate shooter. You can maybe up your volume a little bit more. He barely upped it last year. He would say, and he's right, foul less. And he said he's working on that. And I agree, but that's not like a whole season. Like if Aaron Nesmith has the exact same season as last year, but his fouls are down half a foul per game, who's going to turn around and go, wow, way better, or wow, this answers everything about Aaron Nesmith in the wing for the Pacers? Like, no, and that's what makes him so hard. And so I guess I thought, well, the question could be, was his shooting real last year? Was his defense real last year? And I kind of wondered where to go with this. And I'm curious what you, if you're listening, think right now I'm going to do with this, because if you've proven to be good at the two skills, the most important skills at your position, in a role where your usage should not be very big, what else is there for you? He also had the game slow down for him a ton. I wrote a whole piece on this, but like the fact that Aaron Nesmith very rapidly evolved from like, can this guy be a shooter, to yes, he's a shooter. Oh my gosh, he's such a good shooter. He can run guys off the line. He just made a good pass. What's going on? Like, all that happened really fast. And so those reads of the game were really important. They won this game by 1,000,000 points. But like, part of the reason they buried the Knicks in game 7 was Aaron Nesmith could catch, shot fake, dribble once, 15-footer, bucket. He did that like 6 times in that game. He did it 4 times in the third quarter when things got dicey for a second right before Jalen Brunson got hurt. Right, that was huge. We all know, I know that Aaron Nesmith can do lots of stuff that's very critical for the Pacers. And I just said something that I'm going to use as my jumping off point for my Aaron Nesmith question. I said, what is the big question for a guy who's proven to be maybe the team's best perimeter defender and a 40+% three-point shooter? He's already doing exactly what he should do at his usage. So what do the Pacers need from Aaron Nesmith? Should his usage go up? It probably shouldn't, right? Think about their starting 5. Tyrese Haliburton should obviously have the ball all the time. Pascal Siakam should have the ball all the time. Andrew Nembhard can create a little bit. Myles Turner's a good play finisher from all over the floor, right? His size makes him a mismatch nightmare if teams are switching. Great. So like, that is the hierarchy suggests Aaron Nesmith should be the 5th option in the starting 5. That's fine. That's not a problem at all. His usage rate was 16% last year, the second lowest of his career. Should it be higher? I don't think so. But my answer to the question about Aaron Nesmith and his future, and what my question will be about his season, would be, what does his in-between game progress look like this year? Because that will kind of define what I think his offensive role can and should be. One, quite like a generic thing I've wondered with him is, could he play the 2 if they keep focusing a lot on positional size, or if Nembhard ever gets traded, or if McConnell gets traded and Nembhard becomes the backup 1, could Aaron Nesmith ever play the 2? And part of that would be like a floor game kind of deal, right? I'm not saying he should ever be a creator for others. 1.5 assists per game last year, and if he has the exact same usage, I predict that he'll land very close, to a similar ratio there. But what I mean by in between game is, I just praised him for this, but I'll get to why I'm more specific here. Basically, between 5 feet and the 3-point line, what can he do? Because while last year was terrific for Aaron Nesmith in a lot of ways, and he was way, way, way by far the best efficiency he's had, a lot of it was his 3-point shooting. Right? 60% effective field goal percentage came from that. But he actually, in his second season with the Celtics, shot better from 2-point range that year than he did last year. The volume was way different, not even comparable, right? And so maybe if you asked him about that specific thing I just said, he would say, no, I mean, clearly I'm more efficient and better player now, and that's true. But he shot better on 2s that year. And you go back and look at the shooting numbers. His second season at the rim, not crazy volume, pretty low volume actually, 87% at the rim. Last year, he upped his rim finishing to 69.9%. That's very good. That's above his career average. Can he up that number a little bit? He shot from 3 to 10 feet, 44.8% his first season with the Celtics, 46.4% his second season with the Celtics. Both of his seasons with the Pacers have been well below that, including a dreadful first year with the Pacers in that range. Last year at 43.4. Should he take a ton of those? Not a ton, but if he's more reliable at them, that changes the way defenders come at him, or when they come at him, and all sorts of things like that. And from the mid-range, he was pretty solid last year. Admittedly, that's very good. Keeping that up is important. But in a similar way to with the 3-point line, right, where he's burying them. I can't remember if this was him or Jalen Smith. It might have happened to both. But I believe at one point last year, Aaron Nesmith led the league in 3-point percentage, like through December. He was just on fire to start the season. And so teams changed the way they guard him and how they close out. And he very quickly responded to that. And all of a sudden he's driving, dunking. And I just talked about that stuff already. But like, what if now he adds a floater, for example? Like, he gets into the lane and he sees a big man come up. And, we talked about the level of passing he provides. Like, if he could just flick it in over somebody and make that half the time, you know what that would do for him? Like, a ton, right? And so that changes the way he's defended in those situations, right? It always keeps evolving out from what you can and can't make. It's just how basketball is, obviously. So I think that is what my kind of question for Aaron Nesmith would be. Through the year 2023, so from opening night to New Year's, Aaron Nesmith was at 48.9% from deep on almost 5 attempts per game. So he might have led the league during that stretch at some point. And that changed the way he was guarded. And so if he can make these floaters or do I'm not saying floaters is my question, but like anything in that range that's more dynamic. Like, let's say when he gets ahead of steam, all of a sudden he can distribute. He can throw some shuffle passes or find someone across the court. And he did improve as a passer last year, but not something anybody thinks of as a strength for him. Like, that to me would be the next step of Aaron Nesmith, game slowing down and being able to punish defenses for defending him a certain way at the 3-point line. So that's kind of what my question was, because that would totally, like, once the answer to that question is known, the total scope of Aaron Nesmith on offense will be known, right? What he can do, what he should do, what role he can have. Let's pretend he's the 2. Can he do any more? Let's pretend he's with the bench. Should he be asked to handle the ball at all? Like, all that stuff's going to matter. And so I'll be very curious what that shakes out to and looks like for him this season, because he should have the same role and about the same usage. What can he do with it that he did not do last year? Passing, general efficiency, playmaking from like 5 to 20 feet. That's the stuff I'll be interested in with Aaron Nesmith, and also the fouling. Fouling less. I mean, that's an interesting one, because I thought about it just to get you guys some inside baseball here. Fouling less is a huge deal, right? He fouled a lot last year. He said it himself, right? So if you think about fouling, that could be a question for every player, right? Like, what is unique to Aaron Nesmith? That's why I landed here, and why I think it's going to be fascinating to see in what ways he can grow with the skills that we just described. Let's move on to the rookie, the only rookie getting a full segment in this series. The third segment of the Power Forwards episode is going to be chaos, because it's going to be lots of guys. Let's talk about Johnny Furphy. What can he do for the Pacers before we talk about the rookie? We need to talk about Gametime, the best way to get tickets to theater, sports, music, comedy, whatever near you. You've got to go. I use Gametime to go watch the New York Liberty, who are up 2-0 in their first round series this year. Played the Dallas Wings last year. It was awesome. It was the best way to do that. The views from your seat feature was fantastic. No hidden fees. I toggled that feature off. Price was spot on. No surprises at the end of the process. I knew I was getting the best deal because they have the Gametime guarantee. Well, you can get 110% of the difference credited to you if you find cheaper tickets elsewhere. And Gametime now is a feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting those tickets for your favorite live events even easier. They filter out the fluff and show you exactly what you want to see. Only incredible deals on great seats. You don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And we're back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. There's about to be a game on Friday. I'm not ready. Preseason action. Locked On Celtics and Nuggets are ahead of everybody else in terms of their offseason timeline. As a result, those would be two good ones. And Locked On Women's Basketball. The playoffs are rolling in the W. Lots of people watching. Millions tuning in. That we got the numbers today for the second round. Very cool to see. And you can learn more about those games if you didn't watch them on Locked On Women's Basketball. I wrongly predicted the finals would be Aces Sun. I might get both of those wrong. Let's talk about Johnny Furphy, because with the rookies, this is the hardest exercise. I just said it was harder for Aaron Nesmith than any other player. I should have specified players who have actually played for the Pacers before, because we don't know anything about the rookies at all, right? Like, this could just be like, hey, Johnny Furphy, what are you good at all? Can you do anything in the NBA? Because we have Summer League to go off of. And so I'll start there, right? Summer League showed me the framework of Johnny Furphy in a way that was meaningful. Like, a lot of the stats that translate the most from Summer League are like volume things, shot attempts, turnovers, 3-point attempt rate, free throw rate. Anything that's a rate stat is better than per games or percentages or stupid stuff that people get way too locked in on for a 4-game sample. And Johnny Furphy got him up. 8.8 3-point attempts per game in under 30 minutes. He got the threes up. He clearly showed that he could be a movement shooter. In the second game, once he really clicked against Minnesota, he was running guys off the line. He was dunking multiple times in the game. He got 6 boards per night, right? Like, the framework of what I think Johnny Furphy could be is like a somewhat athletic, good movement shooter, or at least high volume movement shooter. We'll see about the accuracy. I don't want to guess yet. He was a second round pick, for Pete's sake. Like, I get it. That's awesome. And so I could just say, hey, is that really what you are? Like, that was what I considered for my question here, because that player is valuable. Something I've talked about before, and like a theory for most draft prospects or young players that a team is trying to evaluate. If you want a guy to play, if you can shoot or defend, one or the other, you can get on the floor in the NBA. You have to do lots of other stuff to play a lot or be very valuable, but to just like be on a floor as a 12th guy, and they say, we have 2 injuries, you got to play tonight, you will not embarrass yourself if you can either shoot or defend. Obi Toppin leveled up a ton when he could shoot. Aaron Nesmith becoming an elite defender, levels up a ton, right? You could point to a million guys for this. And so start right there. Wow, words. Start right there with Johnny Furphy. If the summer league player, the role they had him doing there, is real, if he is this high volume, move around the perimeter, I'm really tall, I can catch and release from up high, that's really valuable at his size, right? If he can do that in the NBA, I will cut out the rest of the stuff. If you're 6'9" and have a high release point and make threes, great. You're going to play at some point in your career. I bet he'll be in the G League a lot this year. Unlike Jarace and Ben Shepherd, who very often handled the ball, right, with the Mad Ants last year, I don't expect we'll see that as much from Furphy. So Quentin Jackson and Tristan Newton and whatever other point guards end up with the Mad Ants, them creating shots for him is going to be valuable this year because that's going to be the way to see that stuff. Is he a movement shooter? What can he do? But, I mean, in general with rookies, the question or the what's the deal here is just, what is this guy? What can Johnny Furphy actually do in the NBA? Is the shooting reels an important question? If I had a biggest question that I'm curious about watching Johnny Furphy, because I finally dug into the college tape. We did the How He Could Help series last month, diving into some of the best things he did with Kansas is, can he dribble? Can any of this dribbling stuff actually work pretty well? Because something that stood out, and I mentioned this in that episode, is something he was good at is the McDermott kind of play where he would raise up from the corner and get a handoff and then full head of steam to a spot, put the ball on the floor. And it wasn't as like McDermott off of that kind of screen can just turn, rise, shoot in a major way, right? That's what makes him so good as a shooter, is he doesn't need a lot of space coming off of that action. Furphy didn't shoot it as much, but he did sometimes get to the cup or like get to the elbow or get to a spot doing that. And his handle has to be good. If you have a loose handle in the NBA, you're never going to be able to get away with that. You'll push it too far out. You won't be able to create any space, right? So in those kind of settings, can he dribble? Can he get ahead of steam towards the rim? Because if not, he's going to be very limited to coming off of screens and coming off of handoffs to shoot off a pass from someone else instead of just handoff. And if he can't really handle, he'll never have screen set for him with the ball. It's going to be a lot of catch and shoot kind of stuff, which is relying on like defensive mistakes or forcing a defense to rotate. So the amount of ball handling he can show and how successful he is with it is going to be very revealing to me in terms of his potential long-term offensive outlook. And then I have no clue what to make of him defensively. I know what his size is. I know that he's too skinny and he's not going to be a good defender right away. No rookie is unless you're Victor Wembanyama. And even then, you kind of stink to start the season and really figure it out later. So this could just be like, are you good at anything, Johnny Furphy? What do you show that makes the Pacers go, yes, awesome. You're on a minimum deal for the next 4 years. Let's go. We've got what we need here. Let's rock. Or we got to take our time, or maybe this guy can be a piece of a trade we do in the future. That's what this season will be all about for him. I think the path that I would be the most curious about is the shooting. I think a lot of players, that's true. But there's a lot of stuff that I will be generically curious about with Johnny Furphy, who's so young, who thought that this would be his college season. It then turns out he's already in the NBA. ESPN Australia is at training camp already with questions for him. Can't wait to see what he can do. Love new guys and watching new players and seeing how they can fit into the ecosystem. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode and learned something and have similar questions about these players. Let me know what you think. Comment or tweet at me at Tony Arias. This podcast is on Twitter at Locked On Pacers. That's the best way to see what the topics are for an episode every day on Twitter, at least. Obviously, the description of the episode is a good way as well. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about what we've learned so far about the Pacers from practices. We'll be 2 in by then. We'll have heard about units. We'll have heard about certain players that are meaningful, especially back for Media Day. And then we're running through other general offseason notes. And then Friday, we'll do the power forward version of this episode. That one's kind of going to be 4 players, kind of a lot more than that. But Siakam topping for sure. And then a little bit of sprinkle of like James Johnson, Kendall Brown, two-way guys, stuff like that. Then next week, it's time for games. It is time for games. Can you believe that? 1 week from today, the podcast you're listening to will be reacting to a preseason game that happened. Unbelievable how quick this snuck up on me and everyone. Can't wait. Hope you guys are enjoying these. Welcome back to the season. It's fully here. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Till tomorrow, everybody have a wonderful day.